Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillahi al-kareem wa ala alihi wa ashabihi ajma'in. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa barik wa sallim tasliman kathiran kathira amma ba'd. Welcome. Welcome to Islam Comprehensive. Welcome to this segment of the course, which we tend to simplify and just call foundations. It's called foundations because these are some of the core beliefs and understandings upon which the entire structure of Deen is based. When we get these firmly understood, clearly understood, firmly embedded in our minds, it becomes easy for us to erect the structure of Deen, which consists of a'mal, akhlaq, fara'id, wajibat, sunan, mustahabbat, things that we avoid, things that we aim for, our maqasid, objectives, and so on and so forth. The technical term for what you are about to study is called usuluddin. And in Islamic universities all around the world, you have an entire faculty that is dedicated to usul al-din, the faculty kulliyatu usul al-sharia or kulliyatu usul al-din. And what we have attempted to do in this course is to extract those aspects of this branch of deen that we feel are crucial for every Muslim and Muslimah to be very well versed in. The course in general is such that it has that ilm that is dururi, that ilm that is necessary, incumbent for Muslims to have, irrespective of whether someone is a housewife or someone is working in the corporate world, someone is a businessman, someone is young or they're old. This knowledge needs to be acquired by every Muslim. And in the process of this course, some of the things that we would like to empower the students to do are A, have a clear understanding of the content. The content has been selected and chosen very, very carefully. There is nothing in the entire course, if you were to put it all together, there's nothing in there that is unnecessary or redundant for a Muslim. And when I say Muslim, I mean the average Muslim. Everything in there is necessary. Everything in there concerns and affects various parts of our lives. So what we're aiming for is a clear understanding of those precepts, so that tomorrow, when you are faced with those situations, or in retrospect, because you've already faced them, you are looking at them with clarity. You understand what needs to be done if there is an obligation, what needs to be abstained from if there is a prohibition, what are the desired outcomes of that circumstance in the light of the teachings of Deen. In terms of amal, the idea is to motivate and convey the practical understanding so that we're implementing this at the same time, because Deen is not theory. Deen is iman and amal. We believe and we practice. Deen is not about theorizing. That's why we don't have things called divinity. We don't have a subject called the divinities in our Deen, because divinities is about the philosophy of the divine. So, okay, fine, you want to approach it from the Christian perspective, from the Jewish perspective, from the Hindu perspective. We don't theorize. We have knowledge that comes directly from Allah and His Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That to us is absolute knowledge, and that is what our Deen revolves around. So the natural outcome would be that there are practical applications that are constantly coming our way. So we also want to revive amal through these courses. It's great to have a lot of knowledge up in your head, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is looking at amal. So to create a bridge between ilm and amal through motivating, through talking about the importance of certain things and talking about the severity of certain things, we hope to achieve amal. The third objective of this course is for you people at your own levels, especially at the family level, which I believe is the most crucial level. At the family level, to be self-sufficient in explaining deen to your families. And the questions that arise within any household, at the dinner table, during a discussion, during a journey, while just sitting down, maybe while watching a program, the questions that arise on a day-to-day basis, to be able to answer them. Whether those questions pertain to the belief system of Islam, or the behavior system of Islam, or the worship system of Islam, you should be able to explain the basics. We're not trying to create scholars out of you at this particular point, but we also feel, I strongly feel, that knowledge is not just for scholars. This knowledge was descended to be shared with mankind. So no, you will not have the understanding that a scholar will have. You will not have anything close to that understanding, to be clear. But you will have a sound enough understanding to be able to speak to daily issues, not at an authoritative level, but at a level of understanding and explaining to the next person. So when you're sitting with co-workers and questions arise, you should be familiar enough with the content that you can speak to them fairly comfortably about those things. So the conveying of the knowledge at a level that's safe and it's practical. And there are many ways that this is being done. I'll give you some ideas of what students of this course have done and are doing right now around the world. There are some that furthered their pursuit for knowledge, and they went all the way, and they, mashallah, they started ilm and they have completed ilm or are about to complete their ilm. There are others who are actively running programs in their homes or in their masajid, educational programs for the people in their community. There are others who have joined the boards of masajid and are helping run the masajid. And this is a beautiful thing for me to see, because now those masajid are being run through knowledge of deen, whereas most of the time the imam is only conducting religious activities, but the way the masjid is being run, it's by laymen, practically speaking. This is what's happening all around the Western world. But now you have people with a good knowledge base coming and running those masajid and the programs in the masajid and the administration of those masajid in a correct way, in the light of some knowledge. And we have other people who have joined Islamic schools, who are helping run Islamic schools, and now the policies that govern the way those schools are run and the methodology of those schools has shifted drastically. And there are others that are using this knowledge out in the world of tabligh. So there are many applications for this. And inshallah, with each batch of students that joins us, we have very high hopes from them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will first of all open up your hearts for that knowledge which is beneficial, al-ilm al-nafi'. And secondly, Allah will make what you're learning beneficial for you, so that it becomes a correct understanding of deen and it leads to correct practice. And through this, inshallah, the knowledge of deen and the understanding of deen is revived amongst our communities, our families. And the sky's the limit. There's no limit to how far you can go in knowledge and what you can do with that knowledge. Sometimes it's not the most knowledgeable person that does all the great work, but rather it's the person who is the most active and who is using what they have understood to the highest degree. All right, so our du'as are with you, and set a high standard for yourself. Innamal a'malu binniyat. Set a high standard for yourself, a high bar for yourself. And there are a few things that you should definitely commit to. One is consistency in attending the classes. attend on time, attend distraction free. Don't bring your phone into the class, whether you're attending here on site or you're attending online. Don't bring your phones into this picture because it's a distraction. A notification that buzzes or beeps or rings, the average time that it takes for you to get rid of that distraction from your mind is somewhere around 6 minutes. 6 minutes until you're able to come back. And if you actually open up your phone, I'm telling you scientific statistics. I just attended a conference on this. When you check that notification, you open it up, whether it's a text or whatever it was, 23 minutes are required before you can bring your brain to the same place it was before you opened up your phone. 23 minutes. Imagine, how many notifications do we get on the average per day, per hour? And then we wonder why there is no productivity in our lives. And people that are running major companies are wondering why the staff is becoming less and less and less productive. So please keep this and keep your class distraction free. For those of you that are attending online, sometimes you have children and so on and so forth. You need to make arrangements for children. Imagine if you were sitting in a university class or you were to go attend in person, you would not have your children around distracting you. So make arrangements, even for those of you who are here. If you ever have to attend remotely, do it distraction free. I know of some students who took this course, but they were constantly distracted. In many cases, it was sisters who could not make arrangements for their children. Now the time is gone. They dedicated 2 years to the course, but they did it with a lot of distractions. And now they're saying that we did take out the time, we did make arrangements, but we didn't go all the way. And so because of that, there are so many gaps in our understanding that now we don't know how to fill them up. All right. The instructors of the course will tell you about the format, what their style is. Every instructor has their own style. When they like to take questions, some instructors say, you know what, feel free to interrupt me as I'm talking, just raise your hand. I'll get to you right away. Some say, wait till I'm finished the discussion. We'll let our instructors, inshallah, look after that for you. Let's talk about some of the things that we're going to be learning about in foundations. The first thing, as you can see on the screen as well, this is a primer of Aqidah. It is a book of Aqidah that is used, probably it's the most commonly used book of Aqidah in the Muslim world. Al-Aqidah al-Tahawiyah. It's used in Mashriq and Maghrib. It's used by the Arabs and non-Arabs. Basically, all Sunni Muslims refer to this book as an authoritative account of the belief system. So this book it's a clear, simple text on the belief system of Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah. What is Ahlus Sunnah wal Jama'ah? Imam Tahawi rahmatullahi goes a little bit into detail about this towards the end of this work. The particular version that you have here, this is a translation, and I must say partial commentary that I worked on many, many years ago when I created a course on Aqidah. It's not a complete commentary, but it has quite a bit of references for the beliefs. Now, for the purposes of this course, what I would like the students to know are the statements that Imam Tahawi is saying. Those statements are in fact each statement is an account of a belief. It's a maxim. It's a law. It's a belief that we uphold as Muslims. I need you to be very clear on that belief. If there is something about the belief itself that you don't understand or you have a question about, then please make sure you clarify that before the class is over. So that's important. Second thing is, there are some beliefs that have a great deal of logic behind them. And there are other beliefs that we take just because Allah and His Rasul have said so. Let me give you an example. the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the first thing we believe about Allah. What's the first thing we believe about Allah? That He exists. And the next belief is that He is one. So belief in the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is something that, first of all, it's not something specific to Muslims. There are many, many faiths who believe in the existence of a God. So the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also something that has a great deal of logical and scientific proofs behind it. Now, you don't have to, as far as the scope of this course is concerned, you don't have to go and learn all those logical and scientific proofs, but it would be great if you did some reading on it. And in fact, I'll send Sheikh Taha some extra reading material. I recently created a textbook for high school students, year 9 and up, on beliefs. But because we've already taught them all the basic beliefs previously, we wanted them to learn some of the intellectual reasonings behind beliefs, such as the existence of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I'll send that material, and inshallah he'll share it with you. But do read into it. It's quite enjoyable. It's fascinating, because the points are so, when you read it, the points are so clear and obvious. Like, how come I didn't think of that before? And because we live in a multicultural society, we are constantly interacting with non-Muslims, and people who sometimes don't believe in a God, and sometimes they put you on the spot, or they try to make you feel bad, or they try to, make it such that it's unfashionable, it's not trendy to believe in a God, and they would like to present it that way. But that's where you will stand firm and be able to respond to that if and when you need to. So, Aqid Tahawiyah, it has statements where there are logical things, try to have at least a little bit of that logic behind it. And most of our beliefs are وَالَّذِينَ يُؤْمِنُونَ بِالْغَيْبِ. We believe in those things that we have not seen, simply because Allah has told us that they exist. So the attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, for example, the attributes of Allah azza wa jal, most of them are what we can call sama'i. They are thabit bin naql. They are established by text. We have read and understood the text, and that's good enough for us. We believe in it because the Quran is ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. There is no shak. And the Quran is our first source of information. So we get our beliefs primarily from the Quran. And then there will be some beliefs that are not covered in Quran in detail. We'll get them from the very, very strong and well-established ahadith of Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. That's it. That's where we get our beliefs. It's not complicated. Beliefs in Islam are not complicated. One of the things that we will also be touching on are some of the incorrect beliefs held by people of the Muslim faith today. So maybe some of the firqas, some of the other sects, we won't go into every one of their beliefs, but some of those regarding which Sunnis or Ahlul Sunnah also get confused sometimes, or they get a lot of questions, or they get sucked into discussions about them and they don't know. So, for example, someone might have Shia friends, and that's fine, but there might be some discussions there that the Muslim is not perfectly clear on it. What exactly do I believe about this? What exactly do I know about? Well, then, in order to believe, you must learn, and you must be educated on those aspects. Some of you may know some Qadianis, and may have come into contact with Qadianis, and they have their own set of beliefs. So how do you respond to something like that? How do you view something like that? Others may be exposed to the views of certain modernists, would-be or so-called reformists, who are trying to introduce reform at every level of Islam, in beliefs and in practices and in worships and in everything. And they'll say, well, you know what? Well, yeah, you don't really have to fast if it's too hot, and if the days are too long, and you don't really have to see God in that way, and you don't really have to believe in akhirah in that way. And some people are out there saying, well, Jannah and Jahannam don't really exist at the moment. Maybe they'll exist in the future, and maybe it's just good feelings that people will have after they die, but there's no real thing. These are all metaphorical explanations in the Quran. These are some of the things that are thrown at the ummah today, and people are out there on Facebook, on YouTube, watching this stuff. They don't know what to make of it, and half the people end up believing it. And at the very least, some people end up falling into doubt about what it is that they believe. What's the real deal here? So the answer is knowledge. When we get the right knowledge, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala clarifies it for us. Yes.
Just a question. Are we going to be covering the belief or by a group known as the Habashis?
The Ahbash?
Mud, this place. Are we going to be covering that?
To some extent. To some extent, those will be covered because the beliefs regarding Istawa al-Arsh, it's coming. It's coming here, so it will be covered not in a completely academic way. I don't want the course to be taught very academically because then you'd have to be like a master's level student to be able to understand it. We don't want it to be like that, but the discussions will come. All right. So before I talk about the next subject, let's talk a little bit about the existence of Allah and some of those logical proofs. So some people say that the world came into existence through an incident, a scientific phenomenon called the Big Bang. And they subscribe to this theory. And through that theory, they say that this mass of matter began to expand very, very rapidly. And as a result, things were formed. Celestial bodies were formed, such as the planets, the sun, the stars, and everything continued to expand and expand and expand. And somewhere in that process, this planet came into existence, and it evolved from one shape to another shape, and the constitution of that mass of matter shifted and changed and evolved over, let's say, hundreds of thousands or hundreds of millions of years or maybe billions of years. And then all of a sudden, through a certain cell that was created, life was formed. And then this cell started taking on different shapes based on where it was exposed to. And it goes on and on and on and on. This theory has impressed and amazed the people of the world for a couple of centuries now. And the astounding part of it, the truly amazing part of it, is how foolish mankind can be when they choose to be. Because this theory is as unscientific as any theory that anyone has ever proposed. What does science believe? Matter cannot be created, it can only change form. Where did that matter come from? Let's just say there was this collision, there was this massive explosion. Where did that matter come from? It had to come from somewhere. And you have no explanation for it because you say that matter cannot be created. Where did it come from? The second thing is, an explosion of that intensity had to be caused by something. What caused it? Or more importantly, who caused it? You have no explanation for this either. For any theory to be entertained in the world of science, any theory to be entertained, it needs to be able to be duplicated in a lab under controlled circumstances. So show us then an example of matter coming into existence by itself, and show us an example of a combustion of this extent, or even a smaller extent, in and of itself, completely by itself, completely by coincidence. Let me take it one step further. Your assertion is that through this explosion, order came into existence. Not just orderliness, perfection came into existence through an explosion. Can you duplicate something like this? Can you set off a bomb somewhere, and as a result of it, instead of having things destroyed and shred into pieces, things are coming together and forming, buildings are formed, for example. Structures are lining up and erecting themselves because this massive nuclear bomb went off in Hiroshima. So now we have a completely new downtown. Because, as the mass was expanding, things started coming together and, attracting each other. And yeah, we have perfect order now, thanks to that explosion. Since when do explosions? And since when does rapidly expanding matter result in orderliness? And since when does destruction result in life? And can you duplicate any of that? Can't. Is there even remotely an example of this anywhere in any scenario in the entire universe? There is not. And if you want to be specific, talk about the creation of the human being, a word that people would cringe at hearing because they would say, no, it's the evolution of the human being. So what is this evolution? Is there any proof of evolution? And you can do as much research as you want. You will find that there is absolutely no evidence of a link between one species evolving into another species. There is absolutely not one shred of evidence. There is not one single bone of a fossil that would indicate that this used to be this several 100,000 years ago and then it became this. There's no evidence. In fact, the evidence that was supposedly sold to people, you will see in the readings that I send you what shams they were, what lies they were, where bones of different animals were put together and presented as one skeleton of one species. And eventually, as scientists of the next, you can say, batch of the next generation started researching and looking at those, they said, this bone doesn't belong here. This bone belongs to something else. And there were many such scandals, all to take people away from the reality of the existence of Allah. Because once you've taken them away from Allah, you then dictate what rules they should follow in the world. You then become the supreme source of law. You become the ultimate lawmaker. But as long as there's a notion of God around, people are going to be loyal to that God. They will be more loyal to that God than they will be to any country, to any economic system, to any kind of enslavement, to anything, because that God ultimately decides what they do and what they don't do.
Just make sure I got your point correctly. It sounds like the way you worded it. So you just said that there's no evidence of a link in transition among species.
Absolutely. There are evidences of species, of many species,
Absolutely.
but there is no link that one came from the other. Simply not there. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala asks, so guys, where did you come from? Am khuliqu min ghayri shay? Were we created from nothing? He said, no, it can't come from nothing because we exist of matter. It had to come from something. Well, go and find that thing. Oh, am humul khaliqun. Maybe you guys are the ones who created yourselves. Oh, we didn't create ourselves. Am khalaqus samawati wal ard. Or maybe you created the system and through that your species began to proliferate. Oh, we didn't do that either. بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ. Allah says the problem lies in your convictions. Your convictions are incorrect. Those things that you are convinced of are simply non-existent. Change your convictions. So I'll leave that as an introduction to beliefs. Our beliefs are absolute. They're not up for discussion. Our beliefs are absolute. Every one of our beliefs is absolute. And that's how you must learn your beliefs, so that they are absolutes in your mind. They're not thoughts or theories or ideas. Every one of the aqaid that you uphold, it needs to be clear. It needs to be such that if the whole world were to say no, you would still say yes. All right. I'll use this as a segue to jump into the next sort of section that you'll be covering at the moment. And that is it's an introduction to Quranic sciences, to term it one way, or to get the basic understanding of what is the Quran. So you've all, at some point or another, read translations of verses. Some of you may have read tafsir of some verses or a surah. You may have come across some explanations of a passage of the Quran. Tafsir is also one of the subjects covered in Islam Comprehensive, but in Foundations, we want to talk about the Quran itself. There are some things that every Muslim needs to know about the Quran. And without that knowledge, there's a gap in your understanding of what the Quran actually is. And because we don't have some of those understandings, when someone comes around and says that, well, maybe the Quran wasn't completely preserved, then Muslims fall into doubt. If somebody were to say, well, maybe the Quran has some things from Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam in there, Muslims fall into doubt. The Quran says that, well, if someone comes and says maybe there are portions of the Quran that are missing, the Muslim falls into doubt. So the idea is to get a clear understanding of what the Quran is, how it was revealed, how it was preserved, and to take a look at the different kinds of verses that are in this book, so that when you do pick up a translation of the Quran, or you are taking, for example, the tafsir courses within Islam Comprehensive, you know exactly how to view the verses. And we talk about what is tafsir. After all, what is this word? We hear about it all the time. Someone's doing a halaqah of tafsir somewhere. Someone's doing a dars of tafsir. Someone's writing a book on tafsir. Well, how do we know it's tafsir? What is this word? What does it imply? And what qualifies as tafsir? And what is outside the realm of tafsir? So those are some of the things that will be covered in this. Now, as an introduction to the Quran, one of the things that we need to know about the Quran is that the Quran is an absolute source of knowledge. Why would I say that? Well, let's talk about sources of knowledge. Let's talk about where we get our information from as human beings. The first source of information for any human being is always the five senses. This is where we start our journey of learning as infants. From the moment we are born, we start learning by first hearing. The hearing starts working first, and then the eyesight develops. Do we have any doctors here? Any physicians? Okay, maybe anyone online who's a physician? We've had a couple of batches with doctors, so it's been very enjoyable, those discussions. Well, I'm sure we have some mothers. So even mothers know this, because the nurses will come and tell you that the hearing of the child develops first, and then the sight. In the beginning, they can't see clearly. So in the beginning, they can't see clearly at all. And then as the hours begin to pass, then they start developing a range of vision. It's a very short range of vision. It's just a couple of feet. And then it extends to like 3 feet, and like that gradually. So in the Quran, subhanallah, look at how the Quran says, وَجَعَلَ لَكُمُ السَّمْعَ وَالْأَبْصَارَ وَالْأَفْئِدَةَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about, He gave you the hearing. He mentions that first, and then sight, and then hearts, in other words, understanding. So we acquire information first in our lives through these five senses: hearing, seeing, smelling, tasting, touching. This is where we're getting everything. This is what we're acquiring. But as you know, the senses will only take you so far. I can see there's a wall in front of me, but I don't know what's behind that wall. In order to figure out what's behind that wall, I got to use this a little bit. What could be behind that wall? What are the possibilities? So when the range or the scope of the five senses reaches its limit, then the intellect kicks in. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given every human being different types of intellectual abilities and faculties. Faculties of reasoning, faculties of, putting two and two together, forming ideas, forming conclusions about different things, understandings about different things. So that's when this faculty called the aql comes in. Now, the aql is a very powerful tool. It enables us to use knowns, to use things that we know, to reach and understand things that we don't know yet. In other words, the aql is what helps us form conclusions based on evidence or information that we have. And the human being uses this aql in many ways, in many extremely powerful ways. And there are many applications. However, we also know that human reasoning also has its limits. There comes a point where our reasoning is not able to give us any more facts. Comes a point where it's just speculation. And a lot of those walls or barriers are reached when we ask the big questions, the bigger questions. That's when we reach those limits. The aql often doesn't help us answer the big questions like, why are we here? Or who put us here? What are we supposed to do here? What are the limits? Do we define our own limits? Or are we supposed to abide by a set of limits? So aql is insufficient in answering these questions. Where will we go from here? What happens after this? Aql is completely blank. It has no information for us, just like my eyes can give me no information about what's behind this wall. I've reached that wall. Just like my ears can only hear up to a distance, beyond that, I do not know what's happening. I cannot hear what's happening. My ears have reached their limit. So just like the senses have their boundaries, their outer limits, the aql has its outer limits. It has those walls that you just can't see what's behind it. So then there is a third source of information. And that third source of information is divine revelation, wahi. So the actual function and the scope of wahi is to tell you those things that you could not actually understand with your own mind. Just like the scope of the aql is not tell you the color of things. Eyes will tell you the color. Not tell you how things sound, because your ears are doing that in collaboration with your brain. It's not to tell you the smell of things. Your nose is doing that just fine. Similarly, wahi is not there to tell you things that you could have figured out all by yourself. The scope of wahi itself begins beyond that. That's why. Is it a smart thing to try to figure out or to try to understand everything of wahi through logic? No. Because logic doesn't reach there. Most of wahi is to explain those things that you just could not figure out. How would you figure out how many times a day you're supposed to pray? You just can't. How would you figure out what prayer is supposed to look like? You just can't. How do you figure out when to fast and how to fast? You can't. So the role that wahi is playing is actually, now it's the next level. It's what's after the aql. Once the aql has been depleted and used to its maximum. And from all three sources of knowledge or of information, wahi is the most absolute. Because the senses can have defects. A person can be colorblind, and I could assume that that wall is perfectly white even though it's not. A person's sense of smell could be deficient in detecting certain smells. Same thing with logic. We all know how many theories are there of mankind that have had to be reviewed not once but hundreds of times. The average sort of cycle of taking theories and throwing them out or criticizing them, the average cycle, at least in modern history, is about every 10 years. Almost every 10 years, we're revisiting some of the biggest theories, the most important theories, and we're saying, well, you know what, there's something missing from it. It was a good theory, it is good, it's still valid, but it didn't take into consideration this factor. Or this theory is incorrect because it was based on that premise. That premise was based on the information we had at that time. We now have new information, so out with that one, in with this one. If you want to see this happening en masse, study the medical field. It's happening all the time. No, we're not using that treatment anymore just because it's no good. Yeah, we used it for a long time, but no. So the aql is absolutely not an absolute source of information. Wahi is the only source of absolute information that the human being has. إِنَّ هَذَا لَهُوَ حَقُّ الْيَقِينِ فَسَبِّحْ بِاسْمِ رَبِّكَ الْعَظِيمِ. This is the absolute truth. The truth, it is the truth that requires absolute conviction. And it is the conviction that lies on absolute truth. فَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ إِنَّكَ عَلَى الْحَقِّ الْمُبِينِ. Put your trust in Allah. You are on the clear truth. So wahi is absolute, and that's what distinguishes it from every other source of information. And it is the purest source of information. It's untainted. It comes directly from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It comes through Jibreel alayhi salam. It comes to the heart of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And from there it comes out to mankind. So our first understanding regarding the Quran is this, what I have just mentioned. It is the absolute source of information. ذَلِكَ الْكِتَابُ لَا رَيْبَ فِيهِ. There can be doubts regarding anything else, but not regarding this book. So we take this book, we take all of it. That which we understand, and this is the beauty of it, and the simplicity of it. You don't have to understand every single verse in order to believe in it. What do we say? كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا آمَنَّا بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. We believe in all of this. It's all from Allah. Khalas, that which I know, that which I don't know. Otherwise, you have to be a great allama just to be a believer. You don't. As long as you believe that every single word in this is haqq. Khalas, good enough. Spend the rest of your life, spend your whole life learning it. Your life will be depleted. You still won't get all of it. Don't worry about it. But believe in it. That is a requisite. So this is our absolute source of information. Now, the discussion moves from there into the modes of descent. How was it revealed to Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? What did it look like when it was being revealed? So that's kind of the next section that's discussed. And then the sequence of revelation, how did the Quran come down from the heavens to the earth? What did that process look like? So inshallah, you'll be discussing and learning all of those things. It gets really, really interesting. And I would like you to be, get excited about it, get into it, spend time reading. There are a few mistakes that students have made that later they've come back and said that, we wish we had just followed your instructions, we would have done even better. And there are some things that some students have done right. And because of that, when was the first year we launched this course? 2010. There are students who did the course in 2010. They still remember their stuff. Even now, when I speak to them, they're like, yeah, we know that. That was in tafsir, that was in hadith, that was in this. So there were certain things that they did right. My recommendation is that you have class how many times a week? Twice a week for how many hours? 2 hours. So it's really, you really trimmed it down. It started with 3 hours, 3 days a week. 3 hours, 3 days a week. But I think it was a bit too intense for working people. One of those days would be on the weekend. It would be Sunday morning. When I did it for ladies, the first batch of Islam Comprehensive was only ladies. And that would be the time that was convenient for them was actually weekdays earlier in the day when they had finished sending their children to school and all of that. So it would run like from 10:30 to 1:30, 3 days a week. And then the next batch, we took in a weekend day, Sunday mornings, and then 2 days. And then the next batch, and we reduced it to 2 days, 3 hours each day. And now it's 2 hours, 2 days a week. So it's really come down from 9 hours to 4 hours. But you guys are also just focusing on one subject. You're not doing all the subjects either. So that's fine. Couple of things that are a must. I'll get to you in just. Look over the material before it's taught. It's really, really important. What you don't want to happen is get your first exposure to the material in this class. You're going to be far, far behind because the time that it will take you just to familiarize yourself with, okay, what is this concept? And the teacher is going to be explaining it. If you're starting with zero familiarity, it's going to make it much harder. You're one step behind or maybe 2 steps behind from learning it. So if you spend a little bit of time just looking over it, I'm talking about skimming through, reading, and trying to make sense of it. That's it. I'm not talking about heavy reading or heavy studying here. Just skim through the material, familiarize yourself with it. There might be stuff that you already know. So make note of that in your mind that, okay, this part I know, this part is new information. That's it. And come into class. In class, you need to be learning actively. Now, everyone learns differently, but taking notes, it's a good idea. You don't have to transcribe, even though I've had students in this course who have transcribed every word I've said, word for word. They've typed it out. They were just really good. They're just really good at that. That's how they did their whole university education. So they're in that thing. So they're just typing away, and then they go back and review the notes. And some people are great with that. Some people just put dot points, and that's fine too. It doesn't matter as long as you're actively learning. Because if you just sit passively, then your mind will start wandering. So try to learn actively, whatever that looks like for you. Point is, pay attention and absorb the information that's being given. Third thing is, you need to go over what's been taught. This is an absolute must. If you miss out on this, you are going to, you're going to have such a big hole in that bag that you're going to keep filling it up, and it's just going to keep emptying. And every week you'll be starting from scratch instead of building your knowledge from one level to the next level and continuing to increase that knowledge base. Every week you're going to come in and go out empty, and then come in and go out empty. You can't retain that much information at once. You absolutely need to review the notes. Review the notes. We have a system that automatically records the sessions. Okay, so listen to the recordings, watch the recordings, or listen to them. For some of I think for the last couple of batches, I used to do audio recordings for them because it was just easier because people are going to work and coming back. It's giving them a chance to hear the classes all over again. So, and we even did it with the system, with the computer itself. So you can do audio recordings simultaneously if that's something that the students would like. And then we just, send them out as links, and you can download it and listen to it on your own time. But for some people, don't like listening to it. Some people, they want to read it again. they want to read it and then, take their own notes or revise their own notes, whatever it is, you need to go over it. And at least once a month, at the end of each month, you need to do a review of everything that's been covered in the last 4 weeks. If you do this, then two things will happen. One is that your exams will become much easier. And yes, there are exams and yes, there are tests. And secondly, the bigger objective, the thing that matters more to me, and that is that you retain this knowledge for life. It will become easier. Then when exams come, it'll be a different kind of a review. You can go over it in your own way for the finer points and and all of those things, and you're good to go. So this is my request, and the things I mentioned in the beginning, remain distraction free. It's absolutely crucial. It's very important. Every day when you come in, make the intention to gain that knowledge which is beneficial, and make dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opens up your heart to beneficial knowledge and gives you the ability to practice it, and uses you as a source of spreading this knowledge. Keep refreshing that intention. Inshallah, Allah will give you the knowledge, and Allah will use you as a means of spreading knowledge as well, inshallah. All right? That's great, mashallah. This is the first time that this entire course is being taught without me. And I'm so happy not because I don't have to teach, I love teaching, but I'm happy that, alhamdulillah, there are other people who can carry on this work. And that's the idea. The idea is not to just do everything yourself. Alhamdulillah. That's it. Any questions for me? That's it.
There's just a question about the structuring of the course.
Yes.
Is there going to be a scheduled prayer break?
Always.
Okay.
It will always be, and it will continue to shift based on the timings of the salat.
So I'm assuming today everybody's prayed also. Okay.
So for every class, basically, there's going to be a scheduled prayer break, and ideally just let the students know ahead of time. Even in class, that we'll be breaking at such and such time. And the online students need to know as well, so they can follow along with what's happening. That's it. So now you will break for salat.
What are some good du'as for memorization?
Du'as for memorization? Well, look, there are many things you can read to help your memory, but what actually is required are techniques to help you memorize. So, for example, رَبِّ زِدْنِي عِلْمًا رَبِّ اشْرَحْ لِي صَدْرِي وَيَسِّرْ لِي أَمْرِي وَاحْلُلْ عُقْدَةً مِنْ لِسَانِي يَفْقَهُوا قَوْلِي. These are du'as that you can read regularly, but what you actually need to devise are techniques and methods that help you remember stuff. And it might be something really creative, like drawing maps and charts. Sometimes I remember there were entire books that the way I studied them is I made tree charts. For one thing is branching into one thing, and then short summary, and the whole book. Eventually, I did the whole book on one page, summarized the entire textbook in one page, just in tree charts, and that's what helped me memorize that whole book. In other cases, it's rewriting the content. You got to do what will help you remember. If you're not able to retain information, it doesn't mean that there is something wrong with your ability to retain. It means you need to retain it differently. You need to try a different technique. So you have to play around with different methods, and you'll get it, inshallah. Yes?
Wondering about the course layout, how much it can help us to develop our akhlaq, even though language is given the akhlaq, but how long? And he said, okay, let me rephrase that. How are we going to help us to develop our akhlaq to the next step?
Well, there are two steps in improving akhlaq. One is nadari and the other is amali. Nadari means to gain the understanding of what akhlaq are, what akhlaq look like. So in the hadith component of this course, there is an entire textbook that I've compiled. It consists of beliefs and akhlaq. So a lot of the akhlaq are taught. What are the akhlaq of a mu'min? They are taught. So the nadari or the ilmi aspect of it, some of it is covered in this course. But it's also covered when we do the tafsir of the Quran, where the Quran is teaching us ahkam, it's also teaching us many different types of akhlaq. So those are covered. Dealings, mu'amalat. When you go into the next level of ahadith, which are about the social and interpersonal life, marriage and buyur and all of those things. So there are a lot of akhlaqiyat that are covered there as well. How to deal with people, how to treat people basically. So those things will be covered in many different shapes and forms in the course. Of course, the amali aspect of it, this is for each person to work on themselves and take the guidance of someone, stay in the company of someone that will help them, mentor them in developing and shaping their akhlaq. That amali part is something that everyone has to undertake on their own. Yeah. Okay, so we break for salat now.
Last question.
Yes.
Thank you, brother. We are talking about different opinions at the beginning of your lecture. So will we be learning about different mazhab as well?
You won't be learning about the injunctions of each madhab. The discussion in this course are mostly about why those madhabs exist, right? What caused them to exist. That's it.
In this subject of the course, but if you were to do the other areas of the course, for example, you were to do hadith in level 2 or tafsir in level 2, where it's all about ahkam, then you actually cover the different positions of the jurists. Who says what on this mas'ala? But this subject, foundations, in foundations, like Sheikh Taha said, that you will be learning about how those madhabs came into existence and how do we deal with them, how do we treat them for this particular subject of the course. All right. Okay, so we go for salat, inshallah, then we come back. 10 minutes? Yeah. 10 minutes, inshallah. So I've paused the share. Is that enough? Do I need to mute?
You just cover.
Huh?
Just try to follow. Can someone just make the other browser know we're starting? Yes. I don't know if that- Still missing one? Okay, let's continue. I won't take too much more of your time. Just a couple more brief things to go over. First, I just wanted to introduce myself, in case those of you don't know me. My name is Taha Masood. I'm the head administrator and instructor and an instructor here at Al-Ihsan. I began my studies with Mufti Saab in Montreal back in 2006, no, 2003. Let's say. I did my hifz with him, and then I started the Alim course with him. And then when he moved here, some of us, our class, moved here as well to continue studying with him. And then we completed our studies of the Alim course in England in 2013. And then we returned back here, and then we did our takhasus, known as the Mufti course, with Mufti Saab again for 2 years. And then since then, I've been managing and teaching here at Al-Ihsan. Sorry. Okay. So I will be your instructor for this course. In the past course in the Arabic, we had two, myself and Sheikh Shariar, but he's not available this term. So he should be back in the next following term. But for this, for the most part, unless something changes, I will be teaching this entire course for this these 4 months. So as you know, the class timings are Tuesday and Thursday, 7 to 9. Class will usually start on time. Those of you who were here in the past, you know that I'm usually not late, unless something comes up last minute that's out of my control. But usually at the most, we'll go maybe 7:03, 7:05 class will start. Right, so please make it a point to be on time, because most of the time, whatever is taught throughout that class is based on the beginning of it. So if you miss the first few minutes, you're going to be lost throughout the rest. About the books. So everyone has received 2 books so far. The other books you will receive as we get to them. Just didn't want to overwhelm you and confuse you with all the books at once. If anyone wants physical copies of the books, you can let me know. For the books that Mufti Saab has compiled, so this Aqidah book, the Quran Foundations, the Hadith Foundations to some part, we don't have actual published copies of them. We just use them as course texts that we give out to the students. If someone does want them, we can get them printed for them. We have done that in the past. They will be bound and in a proper book format. And in that case, we'll probably just get all 5 books printed for you together into one larger book. They're not very large books. You see this one is 39 pages. The Quran one is 44 pages. So they'll come into one book, one binding of a book. So if anyone does want that, please let me know, and I can arrange for that. If you want to get it printed on your own, that's fine as well. Feel free to do that. But if you want take care of it, then go design a cover for it and make it into a whole book. That way is fine. Some students they have a hard time studying off of PDFs. They want the physical book in front of them. That's fine. It's perfectly understandable. So we could do that, inshallah. Just either send me an email
We'll talk about how to get in touch in just a bit, inshallah. There will be a cost for those books, for the physical copies. The electronic copies we give out free of charge for the students, but for the whatever they charge us for printing, that's what the cost is. It shouldn't be too much. My estimate, if you print all 5 books together and buy them, it won't be more than $20, $15, $20. For those students who are out of town, if you want physical copies as well, again, please let me know and we can post those out to you. That's fine as well. The class recordings, as much as I mentioned, every session is recorded and you will have access to it. I usually try to do it right after class finishes, but sometimes because it has to convert before I can upload, so sometimes the conversion takes a couple of hours. I can't wait that long here for it to happen. So usually when I come in the next day to teach in the morning, I upload it. At the latest, sometimes it goes up to 1 day, sometimes 2 days before the recordings are up. But they will be up, inshallah. You will receive a link. It's a private YouTube playlist that you can access only through that link. And the recordings will all be there, inshallah. But one thing I do request is, because some people, they can't attend class sometimes, which is understandable. Things come up. That's why we've designed this course to be very flexible for people who have other commitments. So you have time to catch up. You have time to catch up on the recordings, but please try to catch up before the next class. Okay, it's difficult between Tuesday and Thursday. It's not that much time, but especially if you miss a Thursday class, then do try to catch up for that before next Tuesday. Because 2 things: one, the next class could be based off of what was taught previously. And secondly, if you let it pile up, it's going to get more and more, and it's going to become too hard to go and watch all the videos then. So just please keep keep track of that, please. One last point, I want to talk about the finances. There's a couple of points that it's important to be clear. I think everyone here is on the monthly payments. So those are usually, they go through around the 15th of every month. They're charged. Sometimes because of the weekends, the holidays, it goes up and down at most 2 or 3 days. The course structure here is the fee structure here is based on per course. Okay, meaning once you enroll in a course and attend any part of that course, the fees for the entire course are due. If for some reason you can't continue the rest of the course, the fees for that course, meaning for those 4 months, will be due, not for the entire 2-year program. Right? And that's pretty much it for the finances. Not much. It's a very basic structure. Any questions about that? Sometimes people have some things that they're unclear about. Good. Okay. So that's all for today. We will be creating WhatsApp groups for this class. It's much easier to communicate to students through that way. If anyone doesn't want to be on a WhatsApp group, then please let me know. And we won't put you on that. In any case, any news we send out is always sent through WhatsApp and through email. Okay, so you will still be receiving it. But sometimes if a student wants to ask a question, it's just easier to ask her on the group, and they get a response right away. You are seeing this right now. Let me just change this. Okay, so the primary email that you will be using to contact is iComp@ihsan.ca. And that's the ones you have been getting emails from up to now, which you have been using. So this is monitored by myself and the other instructors who teach. If you need to email me directly, you can email me at taha@ihsan.ca. Okay, that is there. If you want to need to call to ask, maybe you're studying something and in the middle you have a question that you need clarity about, that's fine. You can give me a call. I'll do my best to answer. And you can also text out that number, send a message on WhatsApp, anything of that in that case is fine. And if you have any questions about finances, then please send those to finances@ihsan.ca. For the most part, I'm the one looking after that as well, but sometimes delegate something to our other team members so they can receive that as well. And that's pretty much all you need for contact. There's also a general one, info@ihsan.ca. That one is more if you have questions about the institute or something else about a different course you want to ask, then you can send an email there. All right. That's it for today. We'll end it at that, and we'll see you all on Thursday, inshallah. Any questions before we end?
Yes, one last question.
Yes.
If you sent us 2 books today,
Yes.
as Mufti Sahib and you commented to go over the materials beforehand, before
Yes.
you have skimmed through. So, what is the expectation? Like a quarter of the book will be covering one day, or like half of the book?
I will send out an email tomorrow
Okay.
about what is expected. But generally, for Aqidah, for example, I can't give you an exact number of pages in general because sometimes one point will take one whole class or 2 whole classes. Sometimes in one class we'll do 20 pages because some have a lot of detail, some don't. Some are just reading through them. So it really varies from class to class. But if you read up on Aqidah, even 5-10 pages, you'll be okay for a while. Yeah, for Quran, the Quran Foundations, it goes a bit faster. So let me just pull that up. So like in your here, what Mufti Sahib discussed today, that was his first chapter, the necessity of wahi, why we need wahi. So you see that's 2 pages in here, right? So as long as you read up between like 5 to 10 pages, you'll be okay at least for that week. Anything else? Good. We'll see you all on Thursday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.